Hello, and welcome to our Be Your Own Boss webinar by Accountable. My name is Jennifer. I'm tax coach here at Accountable, and I have the pleasure today to present you with our webinar. I will go through each of the slides, and after the end of the presentation, you will obviously have the possibility to ask any questions that you may have, and I'll be answering them live as well. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to post them in the questions tab or also in the chat, up to you. And then after the presentation, I'll go over them. All right, so let me just start off with our presentation for today. So as I said already, I'm Jennifer, tax coach here at Accountable, and today I will be hosting this webinar. So starting off with what our mission here is at Accountable. So basically our goal is to make your life easier as a self-employed by taking away all the hassle of bookkeeping and taxes. Now, I'll just quickly take a second to highlight our Accountable Banking business account. This is a service that you would expect from any traditional bank. We also follow the same strict regulations and standards. And the bonus part of this Accountable Banking business account is that it is integrated into your Accountable account. So for example, for our users with a paid plan, you have the free business account with the German IBAN, and you also have automatic tax savings account. That means that based on what you have added as revenues and expenses in Accountable, your taxes are calculated, and then you can basically set aside this money in your automatic savings account. So then at the end of the year, when your taxes are due, you have that money already put aside. Now, in these plans, you also have a free virtual debit MasterCard. Now, if you have a Max plan, then you also have the possibility to add up to 10 additional sub-accounts, which each have their own IBAN, and you also get a free physical MasterCard. If you would like a physical MasterCard, you can also order this. It costs, I believe it's €7.50 for a physical card. And yeah, if you have any questions to Accountable Banking, feel free to reach out to us. However, in this case, I would need to forward your questions to our Accountable Banking team, as they are more familiar and yeah, will be able to help you best and answer all your questions. All right, moving over to our agenda for today. So I'm just quickly going to go over some things that you can do if you need any help or support. Then I'll quickly go over the pros and cons of a self-employment, also the different available statuses here in Germany, and also what the registration process would look like. Then I'll simply explain your taxes. We'll go over business expenses, what they are, how you can add them. And also, lastly, your self-employment, your path to success. I'll be giving you some tips here. And then lastly, we have our Q&A session where you can ask all of your questions. All right, starting off with what you can do if you need some help. So we have our AI tax advisor. So you can ask any questions that you may have, and you will receive an answer immediately as you are contacting basically the AI. Now, if the question is a little bit too complex for our AI tax advisor, you can also reach out to us tax coaches anytime. You have the button directly in your chat with the AI tax advisor. You can click on talk to a customer support, and then you will be able to open the chat with us directly. You also have the possibility to contact us via email anytime. Yeah. Then we also have a help center. So in this help center, we have a variety of articles and also step-by-step guides for any questions that you may have. For example, in this case, this is regarding what you can deduct if you work from home. And yeah, just feel free to skim through if there's anything that can help you with your question. And if you don't find anything or you don't find the answer to your specific question, again, simply feel free to reach out to us tax coaches. Then also in Accountable itself, whenever you upload an expense or create an invoice, you will be receiving warnings or yeah, some little warnings basically, saying this is left to add, or for example, we found a duplicate, make sure that everything is encoded correctly. So that way you are always made aware if there's any discrepancy. And if you are ever unsure, again, feel free to reach out to us tax coaches. All right, then I simply want to highlight our upcoming webinars. So we host a variety of webinars concerning a variety of topics. So feel free to skim through if there's anything interesting for you there. What I can recommend is our Accountable Live webinar. The next one will be on Wednesday. And there I basically share my screen and go through the Accountable app, and I show you how to properly set up your settings, how to upload an expense, how to create an invoice. And there again, you have the possibility to ask any questions that you may have. All right, moving over now to our core part of the presentation, starting off with the pros and cons of your self-employment. So as a pro, obviously you have the flexibility. You can work from anywhere and at any time that you decide to do so. You can also choose which projects you would like to work on, and hence have a overview of the projects and clients that you work with. You also have a direct control on your work processes as you define them yourself. And you also have the potential to earn a higher income depending on the opportunities, and especially if you are self-employed in a niche area. Now, however, you also have cons, which would be the fact that you have unstable income. So in this case, savings can help provide security. You also have new tax and accounting duties. So you are more financially responsible, and you also have a lack of social security in the sense that now you are in charge of your health insurance and your retirement plan. Lastly, you also have the aspect of potential isolation, especially if you work a lot from home, as you don't have that uh, interpersonal that you would have, for example, if you are employed and you have your work colleagues. However, in regards to your unstable income, as mentioned, savings may help provide security, but you can also apply for a mini job or for Bürgergeld, which is basically a citizen's benefit. And this can help ease the financial pressure, especially at the beginning of your self-employment. All right, moving on to the available status that we have here in Germany and the registration process. So in Germany, you can be an employee, so meaning that someone who is in a contractual employment relationship with a monthly salary. Then you can also be self-employed as a freelancer. You are a freelancer if you work in a catalog job, so something scientific, artistic, or literary teaching or educational activities. And these are all exempt from trade tax. Then you can also be a trader. So this is a self-employed person who carries out a trade, meaning they produce products and sell these. Now, in German, it's called Gewerbetreibend, and in this case, then you also need to pay trade tax. Now, you also can have a GBR, which is a type of general partnership, which is used in smaller, medium-sized businesses. And usually two or more individuals pool their resources together to then operate a business. Lastly, you also have the UG and or GmbH, and UG stands for Unternehmensgesellschaft, which is an entrepreneurial company, and GmbH stands for Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung, which is a limited liability company. Now, here in Accountable, we can support you if you are self-employed and also an employee. That's not a problem. Also, if you run a GBR, you can also use Accountable. However, you do have some limitations in regards to your tax declarations. And if you own a UG or GmbH, then unfortunately, we cannot cover your case at the moment. All right, how exactly do you become self-employed? So the first step would be to create a business plan and make yourself aware of the legal structure. So it's basically essential for you to have an overview before you properly start with your self-employment. Then you need to register your business with the tax office in Germany called Finanzamt. And for this, you fill out the Fragebogen zur steuerlichen Erfassung, which is a tax registration questionnaire. And you need to do so that you can receive your tax number of your self-employment. Now, if you are subject to trade tax, you also need to register with the Gewerbeamt, and they will provide you with a so-called Gewerbeschein for your commercial enterprise. Then you also need to inform your health insurance that you are now self-employed, and then now you will be paying for your health insurance yourself. Lastly, you can also register for a trade association and or the IHK. For some, it's mandatory to register. So if you are unsure if you need to register or not, feel free to reach out to us. All right, so we have a variety of different tax numbers here in Germany. And after you fill out the tax registration questionnaire, it may take up to 6 weeks until you receive your tax number. Now, in Germany, you have your personal tax ID, which is your Steueridentifikationsnummer, and you already have this one as a taxpayer in Germany. This, every natural person receives such a tax number, and this never changes. Then you have a tax number for your income tax. So this is provided by your local tax office when you are self-employed, and it must be used when you submit your income tax declaration. Then you have your business tax number, which is your regular Steuernummer, and this is provided by your local Finanzamt as well. This, however, can change if you move to a different state, for example. Then a new tax office will be responsible for you, and you will also receive a new tax number. Now, this tax number must be used on all your sales invoices and all your tax declarations in regard to this business. Lastly, you also have a VAT ID, and this is provided by the Federal Central Tax Authority, and it must be used if you have transactions within the EU so that the reverse charge procedure can be applied correctly. All right, moving now over to our taxes simply explained. So if you are subject to VAT, you need to submit quarterly prepayments for your income tax, also a yearly declaration and the yearly payments. Then you also have quarterly pre-submissions, quarterly prepayments, also a yearly declaration and a yearly payment in regards to VAT. However, it may also be depending on your income that you have monthly VAT pre-submissions. This will be communicated to you in a letter that you've received from the Finanzamt. So feel free to check what your VAT frequency is there. And again, if you're unsure, you can also send us this letter and we'll be happy to confirm for you. Now, if you are subject to VAT and you have intra-EU sales, then you also submit a quarterly ZM report. And lastly, if you have an annual profit as a tradesperson over 24,500 euros, you also need to submit a yearly trade tax declaration. If you are a small business owner and you use the small business owner regulation, you do not need to submit any VAT prepayments. You only have the income tax quarterly prepayments, your yearly declaration, and your yearly payments. For the VAT, you only have a yearly declaration that you must submit. And yeah, that's about it for the small business regulation rule. All of these submissions will be depicted in your accountable account once you set your settings, depending on your status to subject to VAT or to Kleinunternehmer. All right, and yeah, so this is how it would look like in accountable. You can see all of your tax declarations here, and you also see when these tax declarations are due. So for your yearly tax declarations, meaning the EUR, income tax declaration, and VAT declaration, all of these are due on the 31st of July. Now, for your ongoing tax declarations, for example, your VAT pre-submission, is always due the 10th day after the end of the reporting period. For the income tax payment, it's the 10th day of the last month of your reporting period. Trade tax prepayment, the 15th day after the first month, and the ZM, depending if you have intra-EU income or not. If you are required to submit one, it will also appear in your accountable account automatically, and this will then be due the 25th day after the end of a quarter. However, I understand it may seem a little overwhelming at the moment, but then again, you will see the exact deadline of when your tax declarations are due in the Accountable app. Also, you will, after this presentation, you will receive an email with a recording of this presentation and also the slides. So you will be able to double check anytime back to the slides if you have any questions. All right, moving over to business expenses. So what exactly is a deductible expense? So a deductible expense must meet three conditions. So it has to be directly related to your self-employment, it must help your business survive or grow, and it can be proven by invoices or receipts. Now, you have real expenses that you can deduct, and you also have fixed allowances, which you can deduct. So real expenses would be, for example, work equipment. For example, if you buy a laptop or a cell phone for your self-employment, then also the workroom in your own home, if you work from home, any car or rail travel costs, office furniture, co-working spaces, and so on. And then you also have fixed allowances. So this would, for example, be the home office allowance. If you, for example, don't have a designated room in your home for home office, then you would only be able to use the home office allowance. In this case, the maximum amount would be 1,260 euros that you can deduct. Then you can also deduct per diems, which cover food and drinks while you're on a work trip, for example, and also a phone and internet allowance, and also a car mileage allowance. We also have a nice tool, which you can see here on the bottom right. It's called Kann ich das absetzen? And there you can add any expenses and you will see if you can deduct these expenses or not. Now, you also have pre-business expenses. So these are any costs that arise before your official business registration, but are already linked to your planned self-employment. So for example, if you start your self-employment the 1st of January, but last year in November, you already bought a laptop for your self-employment, then this would be a pre-business expense. And you can deduct them for tax purposes if you can clearly show the connection to your intended business. Now, you can claim these expenses retroactively for up to 3 years in your tax returns. However, in Accountable, you can only deduct these if they occurred in the same year of your self-employment. So that means if you, for example, have started your self-employment in July and in February you bought a computer, then you can add this as a pre-business expense in Accountable. However, if it was like in my first example, where you start your self-employment in January and bought a laptop in November, in this case, then you would not be able to submit, or basically you will not be able to add this as a pre-business expense. If you would like to add it, then you would have to submit your yearly income tax declaration with a different platform. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll be happy to go over it again. All right, moving over to our last point. So in Accountable, we are basically the all-in-one solution for your taxes and your accounting. All your taxes are done and 100% guaranteed. They are automatically prepared by Accountable, so all you have to do is upload your expenses and your revenues, and based on this, your tax declarations will be filled out automatically. You then just have to click on the tax return and add any additional information, and click on Submit to the Finanzamt, and that is it. And yeah, so with Accountable, you can scan any documents. So, for example, your deductible business expenses. You also get personal tax tips on your expenses. You can also use our AI tax advisor and ask, for example, what else kind of business expenses can I set off that I haven't added yet? You're able to create any invoices that you might want. You can also upload any invoices that you may have created with a different software. And you will always be able to follow your cash flow and you will know how much you need to set aside for your taxes. Now, as you can see here, your taxes are calculated automatically and you also receive some tax tips. So for example, in the first one, you see you still have time for your submissions. Also in the third screenshot, you can see that everything has been completed, so there's nothing left to do. And in the last screenshot, you can also see the tips that we offer, so feel free to skim through them. Maybe there's something helpful there as well. Now, practical tips for getting started. So there are quite some grants and support that you can get as a self-employed. So in certain cases, the German Employment Agency can support you when starting your business journey through a grant. And this grant is called a Gründungszuschuss. Now, some helpful platforms and resources also would be fürgründer.de, which tells you everything you need to know about starting a business and the available funding opportunities. Then we also have malt.de, which is a freelancer platform, so you can find projects and clients. And lastly, there's also a YouTube channel called Steuerfit, and they offer a lot of different tax tips for self-employed professionals. Now, we also have a income tax calculator, which you can use. And there basically you can have an estimate of how much you will most probably earn as a freelancer. So feel free to check out this tool as well. Then lastly, we have our accountable subscriptions. These are also 100% tax deductible, depending on whether you are taking advantage of the small business regulation or you are subject to VAT, and also depending on the functions that or the features that you need by accountable. We have all of these different plans. So if you are unsure, we also have a small type form quiz that you see here at the bottom, which will help you find the right plan for you. If again you're unsure, you can always reach out to us tax coaches. All right, that is already at the end of our presentation. So I will go back to the chat and see if you guys have any questions.